Hello, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, we want to welcome you to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather to see the lectures and interviews organized by MindaliaTV.com. Today with us, Angel Rebo, CEO consultant, TV host, international public speaker, and president of the Wisdom for Kids Foundation, is going to be interviewing Kenneth Hartman. Kenneth is a senior grant writer, development coordinator, and prison program specialist. Before starting with them, we want to remind you, Mindalia TV is a nonprofit organization. Our only mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world, and you can help us. How? Liking our channel, subscribing to this channel, to this video, sharing it with someone that you know that is going to benefit from the content that we're going to be talking today. You can also leave us a positive comment down below. We want to remind you that while we are live streaming like we are right now, we have the awesome chat. It's a great tool for you to interact with us. You just have to leave us a question following the format. The word question in caps, the question that you actually want answered. And at the end of the conference, Ken and Angel will be answering those questions. Also, we want to remind you that you can collaborate with Mindalia. If you go to our website on the top of the page, you will find a link. It says collaborate, and you can be sharing valuable information to our different platforms. You can do it in Portuguese, in Mindalia Televisão, English, in Mindalia TV English, as you already know, and in Spanish, in Mindalia Televisión. Without further delay, we're going to be leaving you with Angel and Kenneth. Guys, welcome to Mindalia TV. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mirna, and welcome, Kenneth. We are super excited to have you with us today.
I look forward to talking with you, Angel.
Thank you. Thank you. So we know that you like to help people big time. Where does that come from, Kenneth?
I think when I look back on it, I think it comes from a strong sense of when I got to know myself, when I took the time to really get to know who I was, I realized that the greatest joy that I felt and the greatest sense of purpose that I felt as a human being was when I was helping my fellow men and women and mostly prisoners in the time that I was in. And I think it was a sense of following my bliss, following my joy. That's when I felt most human, most alive. And that's why I did what I did.
And when you started to do that, what would you say is the best way to help or to serve others, according to your experience?
You know, I think fundamentally, probably the best way you can help others is by helping them become their best selves. You know, I think a lot of times helpers have a tendency to come into a situation and say, if you become like me, you'll be a better person. And I believe that every human being, first of all, I believe every human being has the capacity for positive change within themselves to be able to impact their communities. I believe that all of us are capable of being a strong link in a long chain, you know, of the idea of becoming a better society, becoming a more civil society, becoming a more just society. And I think that we all as individuals have to find it within ourselves to become that stronger, better link in the chain. And so I think the best way that I could help other human beings, whether there or out here, is by helping them become their best selves. That's sort of I think that's my fundamental belief.
And why do you think that blind spot still exists? Why is it so difficult for people to find that way?
Oh, that's a huge question there. I think a lot of times it comes from, it's a patronizing thing. I think sometimes people come in, I'm better educated, I have better resources, I know more than you. So if I know more than you, you must know not enough. And so you just need to know what I know. And I think that's a part of the history of Western civilization, right? Coming into places and saying, we know more than you do, so become like us and you'll be better. So I think that's a deep problem. And then I think another reason for that blind spot is I think people have a tendency to assume if a person has had a hard life, a person's had a rough time, then they have some fundamental deficiency. There's something less than about them, you know, and that's just, I don't believe that to be true.
And how did you yourself had the epiphany to say, you know, I really feel well, Because right now you're also, I heard that you're you have a plan, like to perfect this, willing and this dream of helping people, right?
I do, Angel. I'm involved in a program called Coaching for Transformation. It's with an organization called Leadership That Works. They put on training programs. It's like a 9-month-long intensive training program that I'm just embarked upon this past weekend. It started, and the idea of the program is to help people become their best self. That's sort of the goal of this organization, which really appealed to me specifically because it wasn't, I'm going to come in and fix you. It's, I'm going to come in and help you fix yourself, help you find your own way to your bliss, to your joy, to your being the best human you can be. And I think in my own case, at one point in my life, I hit rock bottom in the sense of, I had been told that I had a life-threatening disease. I was in solitary confinement. I was separated from all my loved ones. And I had to find a way to sort of get a center. And I discovered going into myself and doing what ultimately I later realized was meditation. I didn't realize it was called that at that time, but I started meditating. I started letting go and falling into this inner turmoil I was in and finding a place of peace within myself. And I think, so it was an organic process of saying there's a way for me to be a better me. And when I got there, I was like, this is a revelation. And then of course, when I read and studied about it later on in my life, I found out I was not the first person to discover this. So, I'm one in a long chain of other people who have found this place in themselves.
How is it helping people who are deprived of their freedom?
Right. Well, so I think that's a two-pronged question, I think, and the answer is two-pronged. So the first part of it is, I believe that you can be free anywhere. I believe that freedom is an internal condition. It's not it's not necessarily something that comes from outside of ourselves. So I had to find out that it was possible for me to find freedom inside prison, inside a maximum security prison, serving a life sentence. It was a tough thing, but I did find that. And when I found that I became bigger inside of myself, and I was able to then see outside of myself and be able to participate in the kinds of things that I did later. The other side of that question, I think, is sort of the delusion that we all have that, freedom is, a car and a big house and a big bank account and, and all those things that, those are nice things, but they really don't have much to do with freedom in the long run, I suspect. So I think it's a two-edged thing. It really is.
Absolutely. And we resonate here at Mindalia TV. We resonate with this message a lot. Would you rather say then that your environment helped you to find yourself, to find the freedom inside yourself?
In some ways, I think it did, Angel, in a sort of ironic way. And in fact, just to go along with that and sort of the irony of that, being out of prison now going on 9 months after 38 years, I've told people there's only one thing I miss about prison, and that's free time. Because in prison, there's lots of free time. And out here, there's like virtually no free time. It's just you're sort of like, the minute you get out, you're sort of like thrown onto this treadmill and you start running. And I'm realizing I have to like regain that sense of center inside of myself, stay there. And by doing that, I find free time around me that's inside of me all along.
Could you help anybody inside, the same place that you were? Could you also help them to reach that place inside of them?
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the goals of my idea of becoming a life coach, which is something I hope to do, is I would then take sort of a pro bono approach. In addition, I believe I can help people out here as a life coach. It is something I hope to do. But I want to go back into the prisons and help teach guys some of these precepts of ways of finding a place inside of yourself of freedom, and also help guys that are and women also that are getting out of prison and their early days of their parole transition, which is it's a truly it's a really, really tough experience. And I've been very, very lucky that I had so many good people who were there to help me. And I also spent a lot of years preparing build a strong center inside of myself, which I know had an enormous role in my ability to be successful too. So yes, I want to do that very much.
You said you've been 9 months. It's been 9 months already. How has your experience been since you started this 9 months journey? It's so, again, maybe ironic is the right word again. It's so ironic that you're on a treadmill ride. You're treadmill right now, right? you don't have free time. But how has that process been of 9 months?
Well, I think it highlights a few things, and again, I'm lucky. I have had an enormous amount of support, a lot of friends, a lot of supporters. I did a lot of writing while I was in prison. I published, a lot of articles. I published books. So I had built a fairly strong network of supporters who've really rallied around me and helped me tremendously. The reality is most people get out don't have that. So, but for me, even with all that, it's still been, there's an enormous culture shock. I came to prison in early 1980. So when I first got out, I would tell people, I'm from the 70s. Can you tell me what the modern world is like? Because it's kind of what it felt like. It's really, the world has sped up to such an incredible pace. You carry around a communicator in your pocket that pokes you in the side about every 5 minutes saying, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And it's very distracting. And there's like the level of distraction in the modern world is really, it's alarming at some level to me. I'm used to having sort of this buffer between myself and the modern world. Guys in prison essentially live in the past in many ways. They don't have phones. You don't have access to computers. You still, people read and they write with their hands, so we live kind of in the past in prison. So in that sense, it's difficult. It's not impossible. And it's more learning about technology and things like that. But on the other side of it, I mean, some of the things I've seen out here have been absolutely horrifying. In Los Angeles, where I live in the Los Angeles area, there are literally tens of thousands of people sleeping in the streets. It's, when I grew up in LA in the 60s and the 70s, there was no one sleeping in the streets. And so you wonder, has society become more hard-hearted? Have people become more involved in their own personal things to the exclusion of anyone else? I mean, so my transition has been good in the sense of support and connections, and I've met some wonderful people, and obviously I feel, blessed beyond belief to be having this conversation with you through a computer, which is, again, amazing. But society is not all good. Some of it is really rough. It really is.
Do you think that process of building a support team that eventually you had when you came out, is that something that you could teach? Is that something that you could actually help people that are inside right now?
I really do. And I think one of the things that I think people inside prisons and the nature of prison really fosters this. There's a sense of despair, particularly people who are sentenced to life like I was. You're essentially told you're going to die in prison. And that's how the American system really works. You're sentenced to life in prison. Most people don't get out. So there are literally in California, there's 35,000 people in California alone serving life sentences. And most of them don't get out. That's the sad part. So there's a despair that sets in. And I think the spiritual practices I got involved in and the practices of becoming involved with helping my fellow man allowed me to combat the despair and find hope and a peace inside of myself that allowed me then to build that network of support and connect with people. And that's something I think I could help people with inside and would very much like to, actually.
Given that feeling that you just mentioned, that just described of despair, what do you think is the number one need that people have inside the prisons?
Well, I think on a spiritual level and on sort of a more of a higher level, people definitely need a sense of hope, a sense of possibility, and then of course on practical levels, people need, they need teachers and they need trades and schools and all the things that have been cut out of the prisons to make the walls higher and, and the fences more electrified. need to be replaced with that kind of thing, with teachers and not just academic teachers or vocational teachers, but spiritual teachers and people come in to teach meditation and yoga and a lot of things to help a person grow inside of themselves and be more comfortable in their own skin. And I think those are the things that really need to happen.
So right now, you are on a path to becoming a life coach.
I am indeed, yes.
How are you going to do that? How are you going to achieve that goal?
Well, I'm going to take this class, which I'm starting in. I have a GoFundMe campaign up right now, on the GoFundMe campaign page. It's called Lifer for Life Coach Training, and I'm hoping to raise some money to help pay for it. It is a fairly expensive process, but fundamentally, I'm going to take this program, and I'm going to. I went to the first cohort this past weekend. There's about 30 people there, and it is specifically set up to be very diverse and inclusive. So there's a very broad spectrum of society involved in this program, to the degree that there's a guy on parole in the program, me. So, I mean, it's that level of diversity, which is extraordinarily impressive for coaching for transformation. And it's a credit to leadership that works that they're having this kind of program. But I think more than anything else, my goal is to actualize the kind of things that I learned inside and bring them out here, because I think the things I learned inside are actually quite worthwhile to the modern world. I was
exactly going to ask you that question. What would you say that makes you different to any other life coaches? What do you bring to the world that maybe we are not so aware right now of?
Well, I think one of the things I bring that probably is somewhat unique is, I have a really strong sense of the impact of social injustice as far as the criminal justice system goes. Everyone in the class has been impacted by the injustices of society. There's a lot of people in the class who clearly have dealt with the rough side of a modern society. But I'm probably the only one that has the direct experience of the criminal justice system, which impacts literally millions of people in this country. So I think that's one thing I bring that's very different. And I think I also bring, and I don't know that I'm the only person in the group that has this quality. I suspect most of the people in there have it as well. But I've developed this sense of resiliency. And I think that's one of the things that I think all of us have to figure out in our own lives, is how to develop a core sense of resiliency. So when the natural course of life happens, which is not always fun and games, we all know that, there's a place inside of you that is strong enough to withstand that kind of thing. So that's a fundamental part of my life.
Resilience. I think that we all need a lot of resilience. And Mindalia TV's audience, I think that we would all love to learn a little bit about resilience. Mm-hmm. How would you say you've learned that? What would you say is that thing that we could do today that would help us to be a little bit more resilient in our lives?
Well, I could say, there's a saying in prison that many prisoners will share with themselves, and it's hope for the best but prepare for the worst. And I think it's you don't want to lose hope, and you want to continually be hoping for good things. And I believe hoping is an active thing. It's not simply sitting around hoping for magic. It's doing things to make the good things happen. But I think you have to prepare for when things aren't going to go well too. And you have to have a plan inside of yourself for how am I going to survive the rough times? Because I think rough times come in everyone's life to one degree or another.
And obviously you've lived for 38 years, you said, inside prison. So I guess there's a lot of different stories and anecdotes and situations that you lived, during those 38 years. Did you know of any similar story to yours? Some victory, some inside freedom story that you maybe remember and that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
That's a good question. I actually know a lot of inside victory stories. I know a lot of men who have done tremendous things. I watched on the last prison yard I was on, where I was at for 16 years. I watched guys create dog programs that train shelter dogs that are rescue animals and train them into dogs to service disabled veterans and to service children who need guide dogs and all that kind of stuff. I've watched guys set up programs to help people learn how to do meditation, to learn how to paint, to learn how to find, positive things within themselves. I mean, the reality is inside every prison, there are a whole bunch of human beings. And I think that's really the key to the word, is they're human beings. And all human beings are capable of not good things. They're also capable of good things. And in my experience, the vast majority of people in prison desperately want to do good things, and many of them do. They do tremendous good things. They organize charity drives for people on the outside. I can remember us collecting food to send to people on the outside to eat from inside the prison. So the reality is there's a lot of great stories from inside prison. I just happened to get out, thankfully, but there's a lot of people in there that deserve to be out as much as I do, without a doubt.
Have you thought of documenting those stories?
Well, in fact, I did years ago. I wrote a memoir called Mother California, A Story of Redemption Behind Bars, that was published in 2008. It's still available. But as it stands right now, my goal in the next year or so, I'm going to write another memoir, and I'm going to write about my last year in prison and my first year out of prison. And I think in that book, I really want to talk about this idea of the fact that behind those barbed wire fences around the prisons are not animals, as some people like to refer to other human beings, sadly. There are men and women who many of whom are doing good things. And I do look forward to doing that. And I'm writing magazine articles, newspaper articles, things like that I'll be working on too. So I have a lot of things on my plate, Angel.
Oh, okay, good. I now understand about the treadmill that you spoke about before.
Yeah.
Do you think that we people that live outside, that have never been inside, would you say that we really understand what's going on inside?
Oh, I have no idea. No idea whatsoever. I think prison is one of those places that are like very susceptible to rumor and and all these sort of myths about what's going on in prison. Again, I mean, the reality is in prison, the vast majority of people in prison are people who feel very bad about the reasons they're in prison, who want to do good, who want to try to make amends to society, who want to try to make the world a better place, including the prison world they live in. And I think most people on the outside think of prison as this sort of Hades underworld where everyone's trying to kill each other, and it's just not true. I spoke with a man fairly recently who told me that he understood that no one in prison would look each other in the eyes because they would feel that they would have to attack each other. And I looked at him and I said, I was there for 38 years, and I can assure you we look each other in the eyes all the time and talk to each other all the time. So, I mean, it's that kind of, and this is a nice man. He's not a bad person. I don't think he wasn't saying it out of malice. He just very uninformed. So yeah, the reality is there's a lot of misinformation.
Do you think that getting to know more what's going on inside would help us in general as a society, maybe to, not only to understand it, but, to make better choices in life?
I think yes, absolutely, without a doubt, actually. And in fact, I think one of the things that I think would be a tremendous benefit to society would be, since I've got out, I've spoken to multiple college classes, including a couple of law schools, and I've told all of them there need to be more people volunteer to go into the prisons to do things. And there are volunteer opportunities available, although prisons often resist this, but there are volunteer opportunities available, because I think the more people that go inside the prison will come out of it and go, it's not what I thought it was. And I think one of the things I've heard from more than one person who has volunteered in prison, have them tell me is, I've learned so much from you prisoners that I didn't realize, and it's helped my life. So I think, sometimes people who live in tough circumstances actually develop some very positive and useful ways of dealing with life.
Well, what would you say in these last 9 months has been the most frequent question that you've been asked?
The most frequent question I've been asked is, I've been asked the same two questions. What's the best thing about being out, and what's the worst thing about being out? And the best thing about being out is as complicated as it is the remarkable technology that allows me and you to talk from far away from each other easily and instantaneously. It is remarkable. High technology really is an astonishing thing. And the worst thing is, I think, is like I said earlier, it's the sort of the hard-heartedness of society. In Los Angeles, I watch people literally step over people sleeping on the streets as if they aren't there. So I think that would be the best and the worst. But that's what I get asked the most, frankly. That's the thing I get asked the most.
Excellent. We're going to go to the question from the audience right now.
Great.
I would like you, if you may, to repeat number one. How can we contribute to your GoFundMe campaign? Exactly. Where can we go? And you also mentioned a website really fast, or a URL really fast. So if you wouldn't mind, repeating those pieces of information, so it's easy for us to support you, help you, and find you online.
Well, thank you, Angel. So the GoFundMe campaign is at gofundme.com, and it's Lifer for Life Coach Training. And those are separated, the words separated by dashes. But if you go on there, it's pretty easy to find. It's on the GoFundMe campaign page. And then you could look me up at Kenneth E. Hartman, all one word, .com, and that's my webpage.
Excellent. So we're going to go to the questions then. Number one, the question comes from someone called Stan Sorensen, and he is asking, is redemption a part of the journey to freedom?
Yeah, I think it is, actually. And I think for me, redemption fundamentally is a process. When I was a 19-year-old boy, I killed a man in a fist fight. That's what I went to prison for. His name was Thomas Allen Fellows. I will never forget him. I honor his life. And everything I do at some level in an act of apology for the actions of my youth. But I also know that I have to live the life that I have now and do the best that I can now. So yeah, redemption is definitely a process, and it's something that I've engaged in every day. And I believe it's something everyone should think about for, their life.
Thank you. Next question, also from Stan Sorensen. When did you realize that redemption was a choice, and how did that impact you?
I think this came about roughly the same time that I had this experience of being in solitary confinement and being sort of blocked out of, the process of life, and sort of being in the sense of like my life was, I was sick and I was going to die, which I did not actually have a fatal illness. That's what it was a medical mistake, I guess. But I think at that point I realized that, and I also don't want to forget to mention, I read a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which is really the most important book I've ever read in my life. And I think he's a Holocaust survivor, and it's been probably sold tens of millions of copies over the years. It's a remarkable book. But I think his conclusion, if I could boil it down to a tiny phrase, is, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to what happens to you. And I think that message really rang really clear to me inside of a prison. It's like, I can't control what's going on here, but I can control how I react to it. And that sort of bled into the entire part of my life, that I had choice in how I reacted to my life.
Nice. Next question. After so much meditation, what is the best or the deepest thing you discovered about yourself?
I would say the thing I discovered about myself is that I'm a normal, regular human being, like all the other normal, regular human beings. And I think that's sort of like the most important thing. I think we all have a tendency to come to it thinking there's something broken about us. And I found out I was just another human being, which is not a bad thing.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. What is, according to you, the ideal model of society?
Well, I guess I would say I'm a democratic socialist by, political nature. I think a society that's a little more communitarian and a little more, has a stronger safety net, a society that cares about fellow human beings and doesn't commodify people and see them only as like how much they can produce is what makes them valuable. So I would see a society that was maybe based on caring and kindness. That would be my perfect society.
Excellent. Next question. How can we find an opportunity to volunteer in prison?
That's a very good question. So I can speak from the perspective of California. So if anyone happens to be in California, every prison in California and the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has a system called the Community Resources Managers. And that's usually where volunteers go through. I can't speak directly to other prison systems in the United States, although I suspect they have similar type things. But, you know, there are prisons, sadly, there are prisons all over the United States. And I think people can literally go to the prison and, you know, knock on the front door and say, hey, I teach meditation, I teach painting, I teach creative writing, I teach math, and I'd love to volunteer here. And I suspect most prisons would probably be receptive to the idea of citizens coming in and doing these things that desperately need to happen.
Beautiful. Thank you. Next question. What do you believe in, Kenneth? A higher power, creator, life itself?
That's a good question. I do believe in a higher power. I'm loath to try to put a name on that and sort of define something that's far outside of my scope of understanding. I suspect that whatever the higher power of the universe is probably is laughing right now at some level. Anytime we try to figure this out, probably gets a good chuckle. But I do believe that life has a purpose and a meaning. And like I said earlier, I believe that our goal and my goal, and I believe it's a good goal, is to be a strong link in a long chain. You know, I don't believe that it's my job to solve all the problems in the world, but I believe it is my job to do the best that I can to be a good link in the long chain.
Excellent. Next question. It seems you have read a lot. Top 3 books that you would recommend?
Okay. Well, Man's Search for Meaning for certain is a book that I would recommend. There's another book, and it's a really completely different book, but it had a really profound effect on me. It was written by a man named Stephen Jay Gould, who was a writer for the New York Times, and he was a paleontologist by trade. He wrote a book called Wonderful Life, and it talked about the long history of life on this planet going all the way back to over 1 billion years. And the thing about it that really impacted me the most was how many times in the history of this planet there were mass extinctions that basically wiped almost everything out. And I think it made the life that we have and who we become more precious in looking at it in retrospect. And then, of course, you know, I would always recommend, you know, the great classics by, you know, Plato and, you know, the Republic, and, you know, and then, I mean, those are books that everyone should read. So, and I can't resist saying, I think the book Dune by Frank Herbert, which is a science fiction book that talks about an alternate reality, is also a really, really amazing book. And it lays out a totally different society that's really an interesting thought experiment, if nothing else.
Excellent. Next question. Do you still practice meditation?
I do indeed. As regularly as I can. And like I suspect, like most other human beings, I don't meditate as much as I should when I really need it. And when I don't need it as much, I meditate more. But yes, I definitely meditate. I try to meditate every day, yes.
Excellent. How can we find your memoir?
My memoir is Mother California, A Story of Redemption Behind Bars. And you could go to Amazon and you could type in Kenneth E. Hartman and it'll pop right up.
Okay. Next question. How is one day in your life today, Kenneth?
The one day in my life today is really pretty amazing. I live in the Los Angeles area. I wake up with birds chirping in the window behind me. I'm surrounded by people that I love and who love me and care about me. I have about 4 different jobs. All of them are useful. I'm a grant writer for an organization called Jail Guitar Doors, which does music-based rehabilitation programs in the California prison system and other prison systems around the United States. They're a wonderful organization. You could look up Jail Guitar Doors on the internet. I also am a development coordinator and a prison program specialist for an organization called the Catalyst Foundation, which also does in-prison programs and rehabilitation things. And they're another wonderful organization located in the Antelope Valley in Los Angeles County.
Wow. So you're really busy every day.
And I also write and I do contract work. And so yes, I am a very busy man. I think being busy is okay as long as it's not too much. And I may have to have a vacation from my life soon.
Nice. Do you play music as well? Someone asks.
I do not play music, although I absolutely love music and I listen to music every single day. When I was a kid, I played the trombone, the baritone, the tuba. I was in the Long Beach Junior Concert Marching Band and the Long Beach Junior Symphony Orchestra, but I have not played any musical instruments in a very long time.
So then that means, and that's a follow-up question, it means that you are fully conscious of the power of music then.
I believe that music is one of the truly universal languages of humans. I think that every human being has some natural propensity to be moved and impacted by music. And I think that music is one of the true, like the highest accomplishments of human beings is music. I think music is the purest form of art there is.
Next question. If you could give an advice to the Kenneth with 19 years old, which would that advice be?
Well, that's a really, really hard question. It's one that I've thought about at many, many levels. I mean, obviously, my biggest advice would be don't go to that park that night, you know, and Thomas Allen Fellows would not have died at my hands. So, of course, that would be my first, most important bit of advice. If I could go back further to Kenneth Hartman when he's 13 years old, you know, I would encourage him to remember that though his life seemed very bleak at that point in his life, that there were good things ahead for him. But on the other hand, Angel, I love my life and I love who I am now. And it's a complicated position to be in for me. You know, I love the way my life has turned out, and I'm grateful for every day of it.
Excellent. Next question. Can you give an advice to young kids that are defying the law, exposing the, hold on a second, they're writing, finalizing, exposing themselves?
Well, the first thing I would say is that if you're young and angry and disaffected and you feel like your life doesn't matter, I would say your life does matter. And there are things that you can do to help change your circumstances. But I'm, you know, I'm not so, you know, I'm a practical person. I know that it's tough. And I know being a young person is tough for anyone, anywhere. Learning how to live in the world, learning how to become who you want to be. And I know some young people have really tough lives, and it's not an easy thing. But I would say that the best advice I could give would be try your best to find someone somewhere that you can reach out to get some help. You know, there are good people around who want to help you. So try to make that effort.
Excellent. Next question. What is the value of family and friendship?
Well, you know, as someone who came from a very dysfunctional family and a family that essentially disintegrated, I realize now how important family really is. And I have a created family now that I value tremendously and that I love and who love me. And I have very good friends who have been close to me now for some in excess of 35 years that I've been close to. And I realize that the connections that we all have to other human beings are the most important things in our lives. You know, other people are what matter the most. That's my sense of things.
Wonderful. Another question. What is the silliest thing you see that exists in the world now that didn't exist before? Okay. But let me say it again. So what is the silliest thing you see that exists in the world now that didn't exist before. I guess it's before you
Right.
yeah.
Well, I can answer that question very easily.
Okay. Excuse me? Cell phone?
I mean, it's amazing. I've been to places that are just filled with art and sculpture and beauty. And everybody's taking pictures of themselves. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get the selfie. I don't really understand it. I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. Seems so self-indulgent at some level.
Nice. Beautiful. That was the last question, Kenneth. I have to say, I'm fascinated by your life, by your story, by what you are doing. So thank you very much for doing what you do and what you are going to do and the amount of lives that you're going to be touching in the future and that you are touching today with this interview at Mindalia TV. So thank you very, very, very much for being here with us tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Angel. It's really a wonderful experience. And I'm glad I had an opportunity to talk to you and finally meet you in person, sort of.
Thank you. By the way, last thing, please.
Sure.
Say again, how can we find your campaign? Say it again.
Right. It's at GoFundMe.com. And then the specific handle is Lifer for Life Coach Training. Just put a dash in between all those words and you'll find my campaign.
Excellent. So again, thank you very much. And, we appreciate that Mindalia TV, everything that you shared today. And we appreciate you answering all those questions, the easy ones and the difficult ones. And, again, consider this your home. We're here for you. So thank you. Thank you very much.
I deeply appreciate it, Angel. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, this is Angel Ribo with Mindalia TV. We really appreciate that you have been following us tonight and see you soon. Bye-bye.